for our second round of budget planning for the fiscal year next year. Thank you again for being here, and I'd like to ask that you please join me as we stand for a moment of silence and then follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we could have roll call, please.
Brad Hand.
Here.
Sean Brewster.
Here.
Steve Hamill.
Here.
Wayne Barahona.
Here.
Tom Eggers.
Here.
Okay. Then we are ready to move on to our agenda items. And we got through your revenues. I think we're up to expenses, if I remember right. All right, the floor is yours.
All right. Starting with the police, Scott pretty much addressed his wages increase there. Go down a little bit. His allowances, that's for uniforms. That's what that increase is. After him and I did some talking yesterday regarding the canine, we're going to create a line item of its own, and we'll be using it in the current fiscal year, which I'll have to amend, and it'll be for canine expenses. So all the canine will come out of one line item. So we are going to add that in for next year also for $5,000. On his education and training, he increased that for academy expenses. Going down to union negotiations, the way that the bills were coming in this year, we decided to increase that across all 4 departments at $3,000 each department. So that you'll see that in police, road use, water, and sewer. Top of the second page, the rent and lease agreement. Scott had to increase that because of the mainstay, like he talked about with their computers, things like that. And the bottom one, $15,000, that's shop with a cop. So we never spend more than what is in the fund. Moving on to EMA. EMA actually kept theirs the same as last year, so I don't think we really need to touch on that. Fire, Brad touched on the increase in the wages because of the increase in call pay. He touched on a couple other things. I don't know that I really need to. So the repair and maintenance, I did note there, that's the south side cement that he mentioned yesterday. Page 4. I did put some money in for fire damage expenses. I don't think I talked to you about that, Brad, but it seems that every time we have a fire, something gets damaged, so I plugged in a number there. That is actually offset with the revenues because we bill that out to the person who had the fire.
Yeah, I was going to say,
was damaged.
Yeah, we try to bill for that and vice versa, so it's kind of a wash.
Yep. And the operating supplies, there's a note there that went up because of the pager amount. Ambulance, okay, the wage increase there, we have in there the additional full-time employee that they're asking for, and something else that we are doing this year is Marie does spend a lot of time on their billing and receipts, so we are going to take half of her wage from this line item also. Page 5. The telephone, the big increase there is they had added cable TV down there. The contractual fees, I did increase that. That is a fee that we have to pay PCC to do the billing, and it's based on a percentage of revenue received, and we just have higher call volume, so I increased it a little bit. The maintenance contract, Kevin touched on that. They're going from $1,700 to $9,000 due to the power cut maintenance contract, shutter contract, and another contract with Image Trend that they already have. That probably sums it up for ambulance. Questions at this point?
On the contracts, is that just a one-time payment?
Usually they're billed either monthly or quarterly. I'm not sure how they're setting theirs up.
But it's a renewal.
It's a set. Mm-hmm.
It's a renewal.
Set fee. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mayor, or Angie, could I talk about ambulance real quick?
Sure.
And police, is that all right? So I have a two-part recommendation to make to you based on the conversations I had earlier today with Chief Birch and Kevin Miller and Kristen Hahn and also Angie. And I recommend that we proceed with changing the budget to hire a part-time SCAT person instead of full-time. SCAT is willing to table their request for a full-time position until next year, but a part-time position is important to them for this fiscal year. I also recommend that we add a new full-time police officer position to this budget, but we would only proceed with hiring after we learn more on the grant funding that we are seeking through both USDA and U.S. Department of Justice. The USDA, we may hear something here within the next several months. Department of Justice, we may hear by October. The discussion either way on moving forward with the hiring of a new officer would need to come back to the City Council after we have more information on the grants. The USDA grant, for example, may only fund, hopefully worst case scenario, but may only fund 35% of $50,000, which is $17,500, and that's only for 1 year. So that doesn't help as much as a Department of Justice grant would. And in the meantime, the change to the 12-hour shifts from the 2,080 to the 2,184 hours will help improve the police department coverage. So remember that, again, last fall, the chief and I, we were all talking about adding a police officer into the budget, and then we decided that we could move that down the road because of his excellent idea for the 12-hour shifts. Now with the grant funding on the table, we would like to put the police officer back in the budget. But before we move forward with a hiring, it would come back to you.
Sam, does the Department of Justice grant, is that an ongoing thing, more than a year?
I believe, Chief, it can be 3 years, and is it 75% of wages and benefits?
That's my understanding. I think it goes down each year, but there's a max. But yeah, it's 3 years. They'll cover wages.
Just for clarification, also on the ambulance part-time position, so there would be one full-time and two part-time positions then? They're
Yes, sir.
adding another part-time
Yes,
to the 1.5 position that they have now.
Yes.
Okay.
So would this part-time person offset and be working the opposite of the other part-time to create the...
Ask Kristen.
Oh.
Yeah, she's on.
You'll have to unmute, Kristen, but did you hear Wayne's question?
Yeah, I guess my question is how you would envision utilizing a part-timer at this juncture?
Well, Wayne, we can't necessarily always say it's going to offset the other part-time. It's going to be scheduled and based on where our schedule needs are, but the goal would be the opposite of the other part-time, yes, but we can't guarantee that all of the time.
Do you feel that it would be difficult, or at least more difficult, to hire a part-time versus a full-time person at this point?
I don't know if it's going to be more difficult. I know there's not a lot of people that are looking for part-time jobs, so that might be a hindrance, but I think we do have some interest potentially as a SCAT member going into a part-time position.
Okay.
Any other questions for either Sam or Kristen?
Yeah, for Sam. So with this amendment or proposed amendment, what's the budget numbers look like? What's the effect on the budget as we see it here in front of us?
It's really not. The only difference would be probably a little bit of FICA and IPERS for the part-time SCAT person, and maybe $20,000 in wage.
So
I'm max $25,000.
So we would shift out the proposal that's in the SCAT budget, move it over into police.
Well, the police full-time position will probably be paid higher than what the SCAT one was
Correct.
scheduled to be.
But we would reduce what's
We
being
would reduce
proposed right now.
SCATs, but it's going to cost the same probably in benefits for the full-time police officer as the SCAT one. but we have to factor in the additional part-time person that we weren't accounting for in those two combined.
Okay.
But at least with that part-time out of there, so moving that SCAT person to part-time, that helps offset any of the costs that maybe would not be covered by a USDA or Department of Justice grant.
Sorry, say it again.
So if we're going worst case scenario and we can't fund the cost of a new officer based off of these grants, we would still be at the same place budget-wise,
Yes.
well, conceivably, with having that half of a full-time wage moved out of SCAT and into the police.
I believe so, if I'm understanding you right. Like, our benefits are going to stay the same
Right.
primarily, except for a small increase with, like I said, FICA and IPERS. But if we don't get the grant, then we probably wouldn't move forward at this point, right?
Well, we would come back and talk to you, but if we did move forward, it wouldn't be or couldn't be until at least October. And then you've got the savings, at least for the first year.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would certainly, going into this eyes wide open, it would certainly impact the discussion next year of, because you'd be, SCAT would be looking for a full-time person at that time. You'd have first full year with a police officer, and then we heard the request from the library for a full-time employee yesterday. So next year would be a bit of a juggling to avoid a significant impact on the levy.
But I guess I could see at that juncture, you could at least take from the SCAT side and eliminate the part-time position in favor of a full-time position. So it's not hiring a full-time from scratch. At least you've got half of the money earmarked.
No,
Well, I suppose not with the benefits, yeah. Yeah.
up to 25%.
We would have the discussion next year, but again, it's a matter of priorities and
Right.
what we want to do with,
That's right.
whether we want to raise it or not. I mean, if it isn't there and we don't want to raise it excessively, we figure out another way to do something.
Yeah, long story short, we recommend keeping a new full-time employee in the budget and it would be geared towards the PD. Before we made that decision, we would come back to you.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I'm in full support of what you're recommending, and I think it's just a matter of setting priority right now, and I think it's the right priority.
So if we have a consensus on that, simply move forward with making that adjustment, and then when this comes back to you, then you'll see the new numbers.
Yeah, I'm in
I would
support
be
of
in
that.
favor of that, too.
Is everyone on board with this? If not, speak now. Looking to my left here. Good. All right, we have consensus. All right.
Okay, top of page 6, miscellaneous protective service, that's the chief's secretary. The animal control consultant and professional fees, that's the animals that are picked up and taken to the vet. We are not going to pay for that out of general anymore. You'll see that being paid from lost. Street lighting, we've increased a little bit just by adding more lights in the new additions that we have. Recreation, not a lot of change there. Todd kind of touched on a few of those things yesterday.
Are we on page 7 now?
I'm sorry, yes, we're on
Okay,
page 7.
thank you.
Cemetery, full-time wages there at the bottom, that's 1/2 year we pay for our cemetery sexton. This is the second year in a row that we've done this. Half of his wages come from water and the other half are from the cemetery fund, so that helps with the employee benefits also. Page 8, cemetery really didn't change. There's that $15,000 for the mower that Todd touched on yesterday. Moving on to the pool, go to page 9. There's really not a lot of changes there. He's increased his chemicals a slight bit. About it. Page 10, the pavilion. Tricia touched on a few of these things, that they've lowered a few of these. They aren't doing any capital, I don't believe. Page 11. Their expenses actually have gone down. So Fireworks display, I typically plug in 20,000. We didn't actually have to expend it this year with the village. That's the village one. If you remember, the Labor Day celebration was paid from lost, so that's not reflected here. Economic development, the grants capital outlay, that's the village project, the CDBG that I explained on the revenue yesterday. Top of page 12, first one, that's just our membership with Northwest Iowa Planning and Development. Got your wages, mayor's wages, finance and administration. The bottom one there, that is for election costs. I believe we will have an election for you fine gentlemen this next year. Legal services, this is Micah on page 13. That's a number Sam had me put in. So we'll see where that goes. Let's see. Going on to fees, that top one, that is our cleaning services by the village. Repair and maintenance to the building and structure. We usually put in to replace a couple of heat pumps and general maintenance of the building. Then garbage service, you see a drastic drop there. That is where we have been paying for the community recycle bin dump. Was 2 times a week, now it's 3 times a week. Times a week, sorry. Now we're going to be using Lost and B&D to pay for that.
Before we go further, can we back up to that? I would like to know the rationale of the legal fees dropping
Yeah.
as much as it has.
Okay, so we have the city code project that's we have the city code project that will be in full gear later this year. I see very little possibility of that being done in this fiscal year. We might be able to get started, but I need to finish the personnel manual first, and then. So long story short, there's how much did we put in loss for the code?
I think it was 15,000.
Yeah, we shifted some funds into local option sales tax, and then I am also with code enforcement. We're spending less from the general fund and local option sales tax now that I'm using the urban renewal option. One of the former Drinko Motors, that's the old car dealership on Old 60. That's going to be on my radar screen this year. There's some areas on Western Avenue, and all of those I'm going to bring forward little resolutions to take that out of urban renewal, including the legal fees. So I'm trying to have less pressure on the general fund and lost for legal fees. I'm trying, but it's not a guarantee. But it seems like something always comes up, but it's an effort on my part to try to have less impact on the general fund.
Okay. And can you, I talked with Ange about this a little bit. So our recycling bin can come out of D&D?
Well, here's the situation. It used to be that Love Inc. did the recycling, and then that, of course, had to change. Unfortunately, it wasn't their fault. And then COVID hit, and then the scheduling changed, and it took a while for people to get used to it. And it became such a mess out there that we had to pick it up 3 times a week. And we really have become a regional recycling facility.
Yes.
And so if you want to keep doing it, either the container has to go away, or we're going to have to empty it 3 times a week. The other alternative, and this is something that I'm going to be pushing for as we do the new negotiation on the new contract, is to have weekly recycling.
Yeah.
Curbside. The new contract isn't until this fall.
I think we've identified, if that container out front is any indication, we've identified a need for that. Mm-hmm. And I think that it will be something you'll have to strongly consider as we go into the new contracts. Because
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, I just like you said, we have become regional with that, and it annoys me to no end to know that, and especially not that I really care that we're paying to recycle other people's garbage, whatever. But the fact that just people are disrespectful about it and in the way that they make a mess of the place. So I would just as soon see that thing gone if we can transition to weekly recycling. But we got to get there first.
Okay. Go ahead, man. Let's go on here.
Okay, the bottom one, that consultant and professional fees, that's a typo on my part. That's only supposed to be 1,000. We use that for things that we don't need, that we use other people other than Micah for. So I'll get that changed.
1,000, not 10?
1,000 instead of 10, yes. Then the IT services, that is a new line item that I have added so that we can track that separately. We've been working with Super High Tech to do some monitoring of our IT and switching over as they're now our email host and things like that. So we've got some ongoing costs every year for that. Then, let's see. Not much else really has changed there. The transfer out, that is actually the Civic Center tax has to be received into the general fund, and then that'll be transferred out to the Pavilion's capital improvement fund. That is library. This is what Nicole turned in. She kind of and their board. They touched on a few of these yesterday, including their wages, electric and gas that they increased. Going on to page 16, bottom of their budget, you see the heating and cooling system that they're planning to do. Moving on to the airport, Rob touched on those.
Angie,
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the 65.5 for the capital improvement that they proposed, do they have that in reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They will end up having probably, off the top of my head, probably $20,000 left after that in their reserves combined.
The next question associated with that: Are they still under expensing their budget each year?
Yes. Yes, this past year, they were in line with their budget, and they had money left in their checking account, which they actually moved to their reserves to create a capital improvement fund.
Do we ever think about making a budgetary adjustment for that?
Well, I guess I don't want to punish people for being efficient, okay? That's how you get into the situation in government that drives me crazy, where people have this.
And they got a roof that doesn't look that good either.
That's right. There's stuff coming. But I don't want to punish somebody for being efficient. I used to deal with that years ago when you'd get to the end of the fiscal year and people would be spending money hand over fist, so they'd make sure they spent all their budget so somebody didn't cut it. And I don't want to be in that same shape. I feel really strongly about that. If somebody's efficient, they ought to be rewarded, not punished.
But at the same time, the reality, if their budget is a reality year after year after year after year, then I think the adjustment would be in order, not?
What are you going to do when they need a $65,000 roof?
Just like we do with any other capital improvement thing. We can argue it both ways, but I see where Tom's point is, but we don't need to decide that today.
No, just thank you, though. I appreciate the information. And the counter opinion, Pete. So.
Ready?
Yep.
Airport. They've got their north hangar heaters there. That's that note there on the repair and maintenance and building, page 17. Down to the contract work, that is a 2.25% increase that's paid to the FBO for contract and light maintenance. And then fencing the north and west and concrete on the west side of the terminal building right there for the $10,000. And then that transfer out is zero because their debt is paid off. Moving on to 18, parks. Not really a whole lot to touch on here except for their capital improvements. that needs to, as I pointed out in the revenues, that needs to be $40,000 for general park improvements and the $5,000 for future park in the notes, but the 45 is there, that's correct. Moving on to page 19, cemetery. So the museum. Museum has implemented into their budget a part-time position, so that's what those wages are. They are preparing to do some maintenance to their roof, and they are now contracting with TK Lawn to do their lawn service. Security camera upgrades, and the $10,000 they put in there, they don't always expect to expend it, but they are preparing for if a furnace fails, that they have it in the budget. Questions? All right. Page 20, that's the DARE fund. We never expend more than what we have in there for donations. Page 21, there you see all the capital improvement items for police, SCAT, and fire. Their principal and interest, we are paying from debt, so that's not there. And the transfer out is, that will actually go down then. I guess maybe we should touch on that per Sam's recommendation, because that is a transfer out to cover the wage of a SCAT full-time employee and half of Marie's wage. So do you still want the transfer from here for the part-time wage to go and cover the general fund?
I would think that would make sense, yeah.
What are our other options?
Yeah, so I was going to
It
say,
just
what
come
other
from the
options do
general
we have?
fund.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Page 22. Hotel motel tax. That's a 4/7 of the amount that we are budgeted to receive. That's what should get paid to the SDDC Marketing Committee. The transfer out is to the park. Trails just budgets $25,000 for any repairs and upkeep that they need to do. Page 23, road use tax. Todd hit on a couple of these. They did increase their overtime just a little bit for wage increases. They did increase their utilities, the gas. I'm guessing that has to do with heating the building, the other building. Let's see. Street repairs, they increased that a little bit. Moving up to 24, or page 24. Contract work, $15,000. That was the tree removal in the right-of-ways that he talked about yesterday. Street lighting is the same. Traffic control is the same. And as well as snow removal. Transfer out is to cover the capital improvement for road use depreciation. As you can see, the notes there, that is 2 years worth of notes. So this upcoming budget starts with the platform and forks for $10,000. That down is what this budget is for. Questions? Okay, trust and agency, employee benefits. You see a couple of changes here. The insurance is down just because our costs have been down. You notice the group insurance for EMA, fire, SCAT, that is actually something Sam had already implemented. That'll be an amendment in this current year, and then what we should be paying next year. And then it just goes through the different departments. Is there anything you want me to hit on here?
Here again, there'll be adjustments for the amendment.
Yes.
I guess I would like to know that, I mean, it's here, but just so it gets, hopefully the press will pick up on this, what has happened with insurance by doing making the changes we have. What kind of savings have we looked at over these past couple of years?
amount was. Do you remember what Tom's sheet said? Oh, I might have
Is
it.
it it's about 100,000 in
100,000 I was
one
thinking.
year. Yeah.
And how much this coming year is another, not quite that much probably, but close to 200,000 over the 2 years time period? Over what?
I think it was more like 45,000 or something like that seems to stick out.
I'd have to get back to you on that. I have it.
Okay.
Place it right now.
But, I mean, that's been a very wise decision, I think, on recommendation on your part, and I think that needs to be promoted, put out there.
If I might, Mayor?
Yes.
One thing I'd like to say, too, is if with the union negotiation expense, is that if we end up with a longer-term contract, then clearly we won't need all of that money either that's budgeted.
Okay.
Okay, page 32. That transfer out for emergency, the emergency is a tax that we levy for to help fund the general fund. Seizure fund, Scott wants to keep money in there for any seizure activity that he has. Regional transit, we typically paid that out of loss. We are not. We are planning on paying that out of TIF this year, so that's why that's a 0.
I'm sorry, I got lost again. What page are you on?
32.
32, I'm
Down
going
at the
on
bottom.
to 33.
When we skipped all those,
Yeah, it takes quite a few pages
Sorry.
for all the employee benefits.
thank you.
So top of page 33, we do have plugged in there the contribution to NCC. That is also on the other request sheet, so you'll notice that. Property and casualty insurance, I did not plan on an increase there. Then the bottom of the page, the $20,000, that is the TIF rides money that we're talking about. Page 34.
Andrew, real quick, what's the 10,000 for the consultant and professional fees on 33?
So that I use when, say, Kurt has a project that we need an attorney for economic development that is not in a TIF area, that I can't use TIF consultant and professional fees for.
Got it. Thank you.
Page 34, we do have the contribution for Children's World in there. That, of course, would take in a renewal plan amendment. Same way with O'Brien, sorry, not same. O'Brien County Economic Development contribution. The economic development funds, that, did you say yesterday a $5,000 increase? I thought you wanted 10.
We'll take that.
Watch it, sir.
I'm scratched. I lined it out. 45.
Why'd you say that?
Sorry, because I wanted to make sure. Okay, I'll double check your memo, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Then we have got the consultant and professional fees. That is more of anything TIF related that we can use. Sam can elaborate a little more on that when we get to TIF. The transfer out does include paying off the pavilion debt, actually. So, moving on. Questions? Any questions? 35. Transfer out of the FEMA money. That was the Coronavirus CARES Act money that we received, and we are going to transfer that to general because what I primarily had to submit for was actually police officers' wages. They didn't allow us to submit a lot of other things, so we decided that the best place to put that would be in the general fund. Then your debt payments, you see there the principal for the event center, that's paying that off. And then all your other debt, principal and interest on to page 36. On to page 37, there's nothing. Page 38, we did put in a little bit of money in Crossroads North because we do still have a stormwater permit that is active there that we'll have to pay. Sheldon Crossing improvements, That is for, I believe it's the residential portion of Sheldon Crossing. There's some road improvements that Todd would like to spend some lot sale money to fix the roads out there. Then page 39, the 41,800 in the D&D. So that is 30,000 to spend on D&D buildings, properties, and then the 11,700 for the recycle bin. Street improvements. So this is expending the bond proceeds that we received for all of Todd's projects that he's got coming up. It is not the full amount because him and I did a lot of talking, and there is one project that actually has to be finished before July 3, I believe. So we plan on that being expended in this current fiscal year. So that's why the whole amount isn't in there.
So this represents the phases that you had outlined before.
Correct. The first phases will be in this fiscal year, and the other phases will be in next fiscal year.
Okay.
All right, water. Let's see here. They didn't make a lot of changes. Page 41, I'm going down here. Telephone. We had to increase that, and I know Todd told me why, and I can't remember.
That's because of the contract with fiber optic services, and the contract we did with them here, so that we have fiber to wells, water tower, lift stations, and get rid of the radio accounts that were causing us issues.
And you'll see that in wastewater too. Wastewater actually has more connections than
Correct.
water. There's the union negotiation at the bottom of the page that we spoke about on the 42. Contract work. Again, sorry, I didn't mark that one. How did you increase that one?
Yeah, it's a $20,000 increase, but it's not an increase in the budget. It's just moving money from one line item to another. We were doing it as a yearly capital, but it was repetitive every year, so I just said it's not really a capital project. It's recurring maintenance. So we just didn't send it in. It's not an increase to it.
And then you go down to capital equipment improvements. I've got that note there. That's for the current fiscal year. I forgot to remove that, so I apologize. So there's nothing in that one. Any questions on water? Okay, page 43, the water improvement. That's the Lewis and Clark, where we've got to purchase the water from them to sell to Clay Rural Water. And then we've got water depreciation. Their infrastructure, again, that's on the next page, page 44. That's 2 years worth of notes. So it's just FlexNets and the Lewis and Clark mixing study for the budget we're talking about. Water deposit refund, that's when someone moves out. I kept that the same. It's pretty consistent. Sewer, not a whole lot of changes there. Going on to 45, page 45. Their electric, they actually went down. There's that telephone that Todd was talking about that has the fiber optic with it. The union negotiation expense. They increased some of their infrastructure. And again, at the bottom, the capital equipment, that's the current year's notes, so don't pay attention to that. Transfer out has to do with their debt payment and their capital improvement plan. On page 47. Sorry, questions at that point? Page 47, their capital depreciation is 2 years worth. The fiscal or the budget we're talking about is the UV bulbs, mechanical steel, diesel pump, fitting hose. Moving on to page 48, sewer sinking, that is their debt payment. And then insurance, we're budgeting $50,000 for claims. Admin expense, that's for the administration of the buy-down plan. And then the HSA benefit for the employees. And cafeteria is an offset from revenue to expenditures. Questions? I don't know if I need to hit on this a whole lot. This is the transfers. There's 2 sheets. So one column is the fund it's coming from. The other one breaks it down as to what it's going into. Then on the following sheet, it says the vice versa. It goes into and where it's coming from. So some of those will change a little bit with the ambulance change that we had to make. Then questions on transfers? Okay, emergency services depreciation. We did a little breakdown of the revenue versus their expenditures and the write-offs and how much of it was for a department other than SCAT, so you can review that. And Kevin talked about that a little bit too.
Can you explain for me what ambulance depreciation revenue is?
That is only money that we collect on transfers out of town.
So that's, and then the in-town stuff is, or the traditional stuff is the service revenue,
Yes.
and the other one is the depreciation revenue.
Yes, so anything in town is, we call it ambulance service, and the revenue generated, or the revenue that we receive from that goes into the general fund to help with their operating expenses.
And then the other one goes to the...
Transfers, yes.
Gotcha.
And that was set up years ago. So they started that fund to help offset expenses.
Yeah, buying the ambulances and...
Fire trucks and police cars.
All right, then you've got a breakdown of where we expect the cash to be. That, of course, will change a little bit because of the transfer on that bottom one there. So they'll actually estimate the cash on 6/30 of 2022 to be probably maybe closer to $190,000. I'll get an updated sheet for you when I make that change. Questions on emergency depreciation? Local option sales tax. So we've got a breakdown of everything that we have plugged in here. Couple things that I just wanted to touch base on. We do have plugged in here the Northwest Iowa Regional Housing for O'Brien County and the NCC LLRC contribution, which are also later in your other requests. The new software for $108,000. I got that quote from probably one of the higher end municipal software companies, to where if we switch, we feel it will be safe even if we go with someone else. Let's see, there's the animal control for animals going to the vet. We talked about that. Police chief's truck, that we do have coming out of here. Of course, if we get the loan, we would, or the USDA thing, we would either only take portion of it or none from here. The cemetery road that Todd has asked for. Mosquito control, I do pay all of it out of local option. Any other questions on what I've got for loss?
Looking at the truck, Sam and Scott, I guess I'll defer this to you. If we don't get the money from USDA, how much of a priority is this truck?
It's a fairly high priority. Yeah, because we'll be down one vehicle, so we'll be designated for
Oh, sure.
I mean, that vehicle, since it has a cage in it, unfortunately, no one else is going to want to smell it more. So we'll be down to 2 vehicles, and as you know, we're down 1 vehicle because of damage for a couple of weeks. Maintenance and stuff, so it would be nice to have 3.
Well, because you had mentioned about the possibility of maybe acquiring more vehicles if they were used, which would increase the fleet. You kind of touched on that a little bit yesterday. I guess I'm curious as to the line of thought of one new pickup versus maybe a couple of other maybe used vehicles that maybe would have better resale. Or at least be cheaper.
So wasn't that tied to having a vehicle for each officer, right?
Yeah.
Eventually down the road, yes.
Yeah.
I guess our thought right now is to try to get one. So, and then the other thought is we want to try out a truck and see how it works and potentially switch all our vehicles to trucks. So,
And this $45,000 number, does it cover the equipment, outfitting it to make it a police-ready vehicle?
yes.
Okay.
So I've gotten estimates. I don't think it'll cost that much, but just in case.
So this is not like a 2021 Denali or something like that we're...
No. So yeah, if you look at my
Good luck.
if you look at my capital improvements,
Yeah, in his
it's a
budget
statement.
thing, he's got a range from 28 to 33 for the truck.
Okay.
So I'm sure the addition to 45 is equipment and radios and...
And I think that's high, but
Okay.
yeah, eventually it'd be nice to. I think if we did move to everybody having a vehicle, one option would be to look at used vehicles.
Sure.
It's probably a ways off, maybe.
Yeah.
I think there was a backside value to it too, Wayne, in regards to how it could be used after, whether it be sold at a higher resale value or play a role within the city somewhere or another, maybe.
I guess it makes it a little easier for me to digest knowing that it's another vehicle for the fleet versus being the police chief's truck. So maybe a little bit was in the presentation of it, but I appreciate the explanation.
That's my error. Sorry. Did you want to touch on anything with this lost? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. TIF. So, as you can see, we've got our estimated dollars, but we met several times and changed this worksheet a lot of times. So, let's see. We do have the O'Brien County Economic Development allocation in here, the SCDC contribution in here, storefront program. Storefront program we used to split between Lost and TIF, and this year we're planning to do all of it out of TIF. If we should need money for SCDC to do another comeback cash promotion, something like that. The rides payment, Children's World, Crossroads North Phase 2, street engineering, the airport fuel project, some light remediation, and consultant and professional fees. And I did want to make you aware, on the right-hand side there, the future liabilities, those are all approved TIF rebates that will be starting in the upcoming years. So we do have to plan to have enough money to pay for those. Questions?
For me.
I think I'm done.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Once we go through the other projects, if we could add, after golf is completed, if we could insert a brief public comment period. It was our intent to have a public comment period each day, and I think that would be a good place to insert it for any public comments that we may have missed, to do that after the other requests have been heard. If that's okay.
We didn't agree. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, we'll figure on that. So that would be before the balance estimates, after the golf. Okay. All right. All right, so then, let me grab my sheet here a minute. We'll go through the requests, the other requests now. They're Northwest Iowa Regional Trust, no one is here today. No one will be presenting for that. You have the letter. What was do you remember the amount on that one? It was just, yeah, not a lot. That's one we've been doing for years, so.
2,050.
2050, okay. All right, so then we're going to move on then to the request from Upper Des Moines Opportunity. And we have Brenda Collier. I'm not sure about that last name. Is she on? Brenda, are you with us today? There she is. You'll need to unmute to speak to us. There you go. Welcome.
Hello.
So we are...
Can you hear me?
We can, yes. So we're up to your request. If you want to say anything now about it.
I just want to let you know kind of what we've been doing and why we request this amount. I pulled a report from September 30th to today, and so far we've assisted 90 households in Sheldon with rent and water bills. 130 households receive food from us a month from Sheldon. 100 children received backpacks full of school supplies. 110 households have so far applied for energy assistance. These numbers are just from Sheldon. 42 of our 70 families that were adopted for Christmas were from Sheldon. And 40 families have received winter coats so far, and 7 seniors have received $100 for snow removal. These are just a few of our projects that we do here. So as you can see that our numbers are quite large in the Sheldon area for those that we assist. The amount that we're requesting is not very much compared to what we spend for Sheldon alone. Just from September of 2020 to today, we've already spent $88,000 in Sheldon.
All right. I had no idea that you were that active. That's some pretty big numbers, but thank you for your service. Are there any questions for Brenda? Everyone is shaking their heads here. No, Brenda. So I want to thank you for your presentation, and we will consider it. I would assume it'll probably be in there, as it has in the
Okay,
past.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a blessed night.
Thank you. You too. All right. Then moving on to Mitsu Opportunity. Dick Sievers is with us, I believe. Dick, you would come forward. Did I pronounce your last name right? Is it Sievers or Sivers?
Sievers.
Sievers. Okay, good.
I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. We are Mitsu Opportunity. I'm Dick Sievers, the Executive Director.
And just a side note, Dick, too, I want to just let them know he is a fellow councilman in serving the city of Remsen, as I understand it.
I got off the council a year ago, so I served 16 years on the
But you've been in these trenches before.
I've been in a similar position.
Okay.
You have a lot more to deal with than we do in Remsen, but
You don't have that stressed look in your face.
that went away about 5 days after I didn't run. So no, it was a pleasure to be on the Remsen Council. We have a great city, but we are a community action agency very similar to Upper Des Moines, who just presented. We serve primarily Lyon, Sioux, Plymouth, Cherokee, and Ida counties. And then with our Child Care Resource and Referral Department, we serve 23. But a portion of your community is in Sioux County, and that's why we include you in our request. We request every year from city and county governments a contribution to help with services in that particular county. Our request to you is $250. It may sound small, which it is, but it all helps us because that goes for local services that we provide. Services we operate include Head Start, Early Head Start, WIC, maternal and child, adolescent health. We have a dental program, energy assistance, weatherization, and a number of other services. Keisha Hickman from Sheldon serves on our board of directors. She works for the AEA, and I don't know if she's still on the school board, but she was at one point. We only served 3 families from Sheldon this past fiscal year at a value of about $5,360, and we did receive a contribution from the city last year, so we appreciate that. Even with that fairly small amount of funding or of dollars that go to the community, that still is a $21 return for every dollar that you invest, so I think that's a pretty good return on the investment. And we appreciate your consideration, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I'm seeing none, so
All right.
thank you for joining us
Thank you
today.
very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
presentation. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to rides. Hugh Lively is with us today. Yes, you are. He's on there by Zoom. Hello,
Yes,
Hugh.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you for coming.
Hi.
Joining us.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it. So I also have Cindy Voss, our Chief Operating Officer. She's on the Zoom conference as well. So, excuse me. Thank you for your past support and hopefully your continued support. I will start off with just a couple of stats, and I'll turn it over to Cindy to talk about some of the operations and try to get all this done within the next couple of minutes. For the city, for the general public, we provided about almost 8,500 rides, trips in the city of Sheldon, which is pretty good, actually. The vast majority of that is with the village, with the transportation needs they have. We also do Elder Bridge, a number of Medicaid services, but all total, we do almost 12,000 trips in the Sheldon area. So we ask about $20,000, and again, just really appreciate that. And Cindy, do you want to talk a little bit about our operating services and how COVID kind of played into that this past year?
Certainly. Thank you. We're grateful to be such great partners with you guys. We are really, really happy to be back to operating in Sheldon Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. This has been a slow process for us. One, in keeping everybody healthy was the major focus. Safety is always our number one value, and this COVID just heightens that for us. But we are grateful to be back. We stay in really close contact with Jerry. In fact, I just spoke to him today from the village, Jerry Postma. It's important to us that communication stays really open, and we know what their needs are so that we can meet those. And he felt today that there really isn't anything further that we can add that would be of benefit to them. We thought maybe going to 5:30 might help, but they realized that was maybe only 1 or 2 people. So we'll wait till there's a little bit more need so we can be good stewards of the monies that you provide and continue to service them as well. So, pre-COVID, we were probably 650 to 675 trips a day. We're now, we just had our strongest day today, and I haven't even told you this yet, but we hit 272 today. So we're very slowly coming back. You can see from those numbers we're just barely at half what we were pre-COVID. And that's to be, I guess, expected. The virus moves when people move, so we want to make sure that the drivers are protected and our passengers are protected as we move forward. But we are really, really grateful for your partnership with us and the ability to serve the village. They are a really great partner with us as well, and I have really enjoyed having a great relationship with them for the last 10 years.
Okay.
Is there anything that I can answer for any of you? Be happy to try.
Just one question. In your letter, that you sent on December 8th, it listed last year rides provided 11,949, and Hugh, I think he said 8,500. So are we off? Is it another year? Was that a year prior to the year we're talking about this year? Is that where the number discrepancy is coming, or?
For this year, we had 8,433 trips. In 8,433 trips within the city. The last quarter, we probably did dip because of the COVID. So our numbers have overall gone down for the year that the fiscal year that ended June 2020.
Okay.
So there was a full quarter that we experienced a considerable drop in moving people.
Good.
And Sheldon was no. Yeah, but for overall, for the rides mainly coming out of Sheldon, we had 11,949. So that covers Elder Bridge, a lot of our Medicaid transportation, our Veterans Affairs transportation. So all of it together was almost 12,000 trips as a whole. But for just the Sheldon general public, we had the 8,433.
All right. Okay. Because in the letter it says it was 11,949 within the city, but 8,500 is really the correct number there. Overall, you're 11,000.
Correct.
Okay. It's still a big number, but I just wanted to it's more for clarification than anything.
It is still a sizable number. I don't have the numbers for Spencer at my fingertips, but I think you guys outdid Spencer.
No, wow. And I know, having served on the board of the village for a number of years, it is a vital service that is provided, and without this, they would really be in a world of hurt. So we thank you for taking that on and being a part of this community in that way. Any other questions for either?
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Or Cindy? So, all right, we thank you for your presentation. You're free to go, and we will move on in our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, moving on next to the NCC LLRC. Greta is with us today. Greta, the mic is yours if you want to step forward.
Thank you. Sam, Mayor Gill, City Council members, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I share my appreciation for the City of Sheldon's long history of partnership with Northwest Iowa's Lifelong Learning and Recreation Center. The LRC's opening in 2011 was the direct result of our innovative partnership, and for the last 10 years, we've all reaped the benefits of this partnership, offering a great environment for our community members and NCC students to pursue lifelong learning, recreation, and wellness. The proposal in front of you today is essentially the same as the resolution you've recently reviewed and approved. This is an annual agreement, much like our previous agreement, but with the added value of offering our City of Sheldon employees and our valued first responders a significantly reduced membership rate to the facility. I'm happy to take any questions that you have about the agreement, but most importantly, I'm here on behalf of NCC to thank you for your support and continued partnership.
Question I had, based on the conversation we were just having with the rides people, how has COVID affected use of the LLRC over the last year?
You bet. We are at about 50% of our normal attendance rates at the LLRC. That's ebbed and flowed from about 40 to 50% throughout the last 6 to 12 months. Of course, we had to close for 9 weeks this spring due to our state mandate, and that was very challenging. I was just having a conversation with Kurt earlier that I think that the real impact that we're going to see at the rec center is going to be in 2021, because we are going to see what happens as those mandates are lifted and people start to be more comfortable coming back to the facility. Our student usage remains very high and very successful. The challenge is folks feeling comfortable coming back inside. But I'm very confident in the work that my team has done to make sure it's the safest place possible for people to stay healthy. Thanks for asking.
Any other questions?
None for me, thank you.
This money, is that just used for operating?
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Greta, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greta.
Okay, moving on next to the school district turf request. We have Corey Myers with us, Superintendent of Sheldon Community Schools. And I think he's going to tag team perhaps with Aletha, or are you just here as a moral support? All right.
We'll let her get up here as well. We planned a song and dance, but Sam told us we had to shorten it up, so we're going to save that for another night. No, we are excited about a potential collaboration with the city of Sheldon, with NCC, and with the school on a turf project. It's one of those opportunities that can really benefit us, and as we look at other 2080 agreements, we've seen a lot of successful, as we just heard about with the LLRC and with the field project. There are a couple of successful examples that we had in the past. This would benefit the school district in a lot of ways, from our athletics, our soccer field currently that isn't really a true soccer field. It just kind of played along Highway 18 there with no protective barrier or anything from the highway. It would help our marching band. It would help our football team, all of those activities that would be able to use it. So those are some of the positive things. Then we looked at how can this benefit us from a city standpoint? How can the rec department get in there and use that? So we've had some conversations about that. And then, of course, the next component is how can NCC be a partner in this as well? And I'll let Aletha talk just a little bit about what that partnership could look like.
As a result of strategic enrollment planning, NCC...
If you can come up to the mic, Aletha. Please come to the mic, because it is being recorded.
As a result of strategic enrollment planning, NCC formed our Athletic Research Committee September 2016 already to do evidence-based research on adding collegiate athletics to NCC's offerings. As you know, at the time we ranked sports in order of popularity, the expense, the revenue, and enrollment increases. It's really enrollment driven. Upon board approval, sports shooting became our first intercollegiate sport in the spring 2018. Soccer and cross country were the next two identified. And soccer, of course, is one of the fastest growing, most popular sports around. But the largest cost is the field, of course, for us. So sharing makes sense. With the implementation of sports shooting, soccer, and cross country, we feel we can add 85 student athletes to our campus, and they could be choosing NCC for their post-secondary education. And as you know, students that come to NCC tend to stay in the area. So we're growing the population and the workforce for the area by doing this. The soccer schedule for the Iowa Community College Athletic Conference ties in nicely with being able to hold our practices and games at the school. And there's just so many benefits of intercollegiate soccer that I could talk about, but increased enrollment being our largest one. Economic impact, though, affects not only NCC, but it affects the city. Our students buy gas, go to restaurants, do things in the community. So even some bars sometimes, but we won't talk about that. But we think that it's a win-win-win, actually, for the city, for the community, for the school, the district as well. So we'd like to see this go, whether it's 2022 or beyond for us to start soccer. As I said, the field is the largest expense, but then there would be other things that need to be put in place. But if it were there and we could partner into it, we know it's there for the future and we can keep moving forward. And collaboration pays. It's a fiscally responsible thing for us to do, and it will enhance quality of life both at the college and in the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Aletha.
Thanks.
So just kind of wrapping that up, I think when we're looking at activities, some of that information that you saw in front of you, we're talking 50 to 60 games, over 300 practices and activities that could occur in a year. Essentially, from the time the snow melts until the snow falls, it would be used almost on a daily basis and a lot of times multiple times per day. Some things that you might not think about, even like baseball, softball, when those fields get wet, you can actually practice on the turf, very common. And those numbers that we've looked at, we've visited with area communities that have turf, and the ones we've talked to have all said they've got 300 plus activities. Some that have more activities even at the collegiate level, they're up at 500 uses in a given year. So we feel really good about the amount of usage. It would be really strong. Once again, it's a great collaboration process between the city, the college, and the school, and I think just really advantageous. So with that, open it up. Do you guys have some questions, anything that we can answer for you?
Yeah, Corey, I've got a question. Thank you again for the presentation, both of you, citing project. But I don't recall the first time. Did you guys mention anything about any private donation or program going on for this?
So what we would look at would be we're right now looking at our 3 community partners with the school, NCC, and with the city. Once we have that in place, then we would start a fundraising campaign and go out and look for other contributions. One of the things that we know would be beneficial is just if we bring all 3 entities together, we're going to bring more potential donors to the table. Is that what you're referencing, Tom?
It is, and I'm glad to hear that that's part of the strategy of the committee. What % are you looking for from private?
Yeah, and so we've kind of broke it down. We would hope that would be kind of in that 20 to 30% is kind of what we're hoping, but it really varies from community to community. Some communities have had really successful campaigns, and they've been close to 100% in donations. We know COVID may potentially have a negative impact on our ability to do so. And so we also don't want to push too hard on our community that might be financially strapped because of that situation. So we'll fundraise and see what we can pull in there. If that number comes in higher than what we're anticipating, then that just reduces the cost for those other partners, including the city that we would be working with.
Okay, thank you.
Corey, as it stands right now, what is the cost share that you're proposing at this moment between the 3 entities?
Yeah, and so just what we're proposing, the portion that I asked you guys for was the $25,000 per year for a 10-year time period, so a $250,000 contribution. The number that we would ask NCC for would be a larger number just based on usage, and then the school's portion would be higher than those just because, once again, our usage is going to be higher as well. So you're looking in that 15 to 20% range, 20 to 25% range, 40 to 50% range for each of those entities. And all of that kind of depends on what those donations and community contributions come in. There are a couple of people in the community and a couple of entities that have expressed a desire to donate. We just don't know at what level that's going to be yet. And once again, we'll start that campaign here in the very near future. And those percentages, once again, could vary depending on what those numbers look like.
And is the start of this fundraising campaign, or basically the start of this process, contingent upon this board's action?
No, I wouldn't say it's contingent on this board's action, but obviously, from our standpoint, we want to get the 3 entities together if we can make that happen, and so we would certainly love the city to be a partner in this. We will proceed on this project if the city is not involved in this project. That just obviously takes the city out of the collaboration, which we think would be a loss for a lot of different reasons. But our hope would be that the city would join on board in this collaboration, and then we would start that fundraising campaign and be able to really build some community pride on the 3 entities working together on this project.
Okay, thank you.
So on your comment, Wayne, I'll just piggyback off that. Last month at the SCDC meeting, they presented this to the board, and then after that, we approved the marketing's upcoming budget. And if I remember right, they have $20,000, Kurt, coming out of their fund that will be paid. Is that for the ball fields?
Pavilion. So currently
Pavilion.
they're on,
Yeah.
This next calendar year is year 5 of the Crossroads Pavilion pledge of $20,000.
Yeah.
So that will expire at the end of 2021.
Yeah. So I challenge the board and the marketing committee to maybe fund this project with those dollars that will be coming free. Because that fits right into marketing, and so I threw that out there and for them to consider. So
That was their response.
I haven't heard.
Checks-
And it's tax dollars
checks in
because
the
it's
mail.
marketing funds, so it's still
Yeah, it's
tax
hotel,
dollars.
motel tax
Yes.
dollars, yeah.
So
So that would be
In place of the pavilion.
this? Or we would still do, are you thinking on top
I
of?
think use it for this. Take that 20,000 out of that marketing and put it towards this project.
But there was still 5,000, but.
Yeah,
put it
then
in
we'll
the-
have to come up with 5,000.
Well, yeah, that's a lot easier to stomach than 25.
I guess my only comment, in terms of collaboration, I look at what's happened with the LLRC over the 10 years ago, we agreed to do that. We've worked together with the school, with the sports complex. That's been a successful, wonderful project. And anytime we can get everyone, as many parties as possible working together, it helps everybody. It spreads it out, and it makes it, the facility being used as much as you're talking about, to have it used for just football, it doesn't make sense. But if you multiply the use, then you get a lot more bang for your buck out of those dollars. And so I think it's a great project.
I might have missed this, but will the college be adding one team or two teams?
Men's and women's.
So as you guys can tell, I think we're behind the premises. We're just figuring out how to fund it. So
It's always the challenge.
yeah, it
Tom.
is, isn't it? Huh? So
We're right there with you.
yeah. So we appreciate you presenting again.
Anything else?
No further questions?
All right. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
consideration.
Thank you both for being with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exciting project. All right. We are up to the chamber request regarding the depot beautification and then the turf. That's what I thought, but it says I've got depot and turf is listed as.
It's supposed to say tree.
That's what I'm saying, with the question mark.
All right. As you saw in my memo, I actually have two requests that I would like for the city to consider. The first request would be to help fund renovations to the historic train depot. This building that is owned by the city currently is really only used for hosting our farmers market during the late spring to early fall months. And we sincerely appreciate the city allowing us to use that building for that. However, we feel that this is a very underused facility, and if this building were to be renovated, there would be numerous additional uses for this building. A few of the renovations that we're kind of starting to look into. Paint is one that really needs to be taken care of on the inside. Every year when we open up the building to start the farmers market, we have to scrape the ceiling, sweep it all up. It takes several hours to clean the whole thing, and that's simply just to get rid of paint chips. There is also a grant that I have looked into to help with the paint. Another thing that we would like to see is heating and possibly cooling. Possible updates to plumbing and electrical, redo the ramp to the front door, repair and possibly replace some of the windows, refinish the floor, and then upgrade and purchase additional tables and chairs. Any questions on that request?
So making it more useful, how do you anticipate that happening?
So I think that there would be additional events that we would be able to hold there as far as SCDC goes. Also, I have spoke with Tricia, and we feel it would be a nice smaller event type center that you could host things like graduations and baby showers, wedding showers, those sorts of things. Things that would potentially be held at the pavilion, but maybe people don't want to pay quite the price that you would have to pay to rent the pavilion, and so this would just be another option here in town. Years ago, it used to be you could go to the bank and use their community room or whatever, and we don't have necessarily that many things that you can rent for those types of events. So.
I want to chime in. Also, with our calendar the way it is,
Yeah.
some people call and we are filling up with those weekend requests that we can't accommodate this bridal shower, wedding shower, graduation party events. So it would be a compliment to the city.
So.
Chantel, my question is the dollar figure. How'd you get to that?
It's just a starting point. Obviously, this list is going to be over and above that dollar amount. So it was just a number that we put out there to begin. With it being a historical building, there's numerous grants out there that we could look into as well to help with funding additional, but simply a starting point.
Sure.
Anyone else?
I guess I'd just chime in and say that I go way back with that particular place for a lot of different reasons, a lot of stories, but I won't get into those. But it would be nice to see something happen there. It's a fantastic building if you've ever looked at it. They built that building with all bridge materials. It's unbelievable. The joists are like 4 by 16. They're unbelievable. It's a shame to have it just sit there, and there was a point when there was a danger of it getting torn down, and we didn't do that. And I guess I don't even know how many pounds of paint I've vacuumed out of that over the years, but it would be nice to see something happen that could be of use. And I understand that it's a little bit of a stretch maybe, but it's a fantastic facility. But
wasn't it going to be the trailhead at one point?
At one time, it was going to be the trailhead. In fact, the only reason it's not is that we spent so many years talking with the railroad that goes east, and finally just gave up. We had hoped to follow that with the trail, and for a number of years we pursued that, and we finally just gave up.
Yeah.
So even with the proposal of coming up from Western with the trail, could it still facilitate a trailhead going west?
Of some sort, yes, sure. There could, if we get the connection from, okay, the trail goes from the college to Western Avenue. The piece from Western Avenue down to the river doesn't get used a lot, but that was originally going to continue past the depot and go on from there. Now, there's no reason it can't get to the depot and then turn south and go down and hook up with something else rather than follow the railroad. So it would still get to be used, yes. So, multiple purposes.
Okay, anything else on that? Let's talk about the tree.
All right. So my second request, we are also interested in purchasing a commercial artificial Christmas tree that could be placed in the Mayor's Park just outside the Community Services Center during the holidays. Sheldon's motto is where families come first, and following that motto, we feel it is important to provide annual traditions for families, including during the holiday season. This past holiday season, we hosted our first Parade of Lights, which was well received by the community, and we would like to continue to grow this event, hopefully with a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. We also feel that it would help to enhance the look of our downtown during the holiday season. Any questions on that?
Chantel, how much tree can you get for $5,000?
For $5,000, if I were to purchase it now, while they're all on sale, we would be looking at roughly 12 to 14 foot Christmas tree. So, if you've ever been to Lamar's and seen theirs, they actually have a 26-foot Christmas tree, which is something I would love. But
well, and for many years there was a tree out here that got decorated every year. It didn't survive.
yeah.
Thanks, Todd.
And going with an artificial tree would, help with the mess of a real tree outside. I understand that caused some acidity in the soil, so it was hard to grow other plants and shrubbery in that area. So,
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chantel. All right, we are up to the request from, CASA. Bobby Miller is not coming today for CASA.
If I might, Mayor.
Yes, would you please?
So the CASA request is for $250, and they served 16 clients in Sheldon last calendar year.
Any comments or questions on that? If not, let's move on to the golf course request. Jason? Jason Hingeveld is with us.
Mayor Geels, council members, Sam, thank you on behalf of the Sheldon Golf and Country Club for having us here today. You have received the request from us for a sum of $5,000 for updates to our ever-aging clubhouse. In the past few years, we've had a good connection and relationship with the funds with the city in the past, and they've been well received and used out at the country club. As of recent, we've decided it's time to finally update our downstairs bar and restaurant area and make a few renovations. We have Sawyer Construction there to give us some guidance on the direction to go as far as blueprints and supplies. So the amount that we came to that we're requesting in the range of $5,000 is more so due for just the lumber, supplies, some plumbing needed, and the project itself we're targeting between a $20,000 and $30,000 project to do. So this would just be some slight cost to improve the face and give an opportunity for the community members for a updated asset to the community. So.
All right. Any questions for Jason?
Yeah, Jason, are you guys carrying any debt load right now?
Currently, no. From previous, we used, I don't know, that was 2 years ago, we used some of the funds provided by the city to get rid of all of our debt. So we currently do not have any debt load.
Okay.
Am I correct in assuming you're on the board of directors?
That is correct. Yes, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Sam. We are, our current agreement with the city, we are willing to re-opt that as well. So for the rec department, as well as the Sheldon High School and NCC usage for the course.
Okay.
Sam didn't put council members in there?
Maybe for another 5. All right.
I think I need the LRC more than
You're probably right.
All right.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, Jason, thank you for
guys
coming today.
Yeah, thank you.
And as I have it, that's the end of our requests. So, yes, would you?
Before we get into the public comment period, if we could just do a brief recap of the requests. So if you go to your local option sales tax sheet at the bottom, you have an estimated balance. There's 2 numbers to get to your estimated balance. You have the $10,508 at the bottom, plus the $327,000 in investments. It used to be that part of the fund was put into CDs, but since we're getting the higher interest rate, it's really all part of the same fund, but it's sequestered into investments. But if you add those 2 numbers together, that gives your local option sales tax projected balance, and that's $337,508. So you take that and you subtract out the 5 requests except for turf, the 5 requests that were not funded in the budget, which would be Upper Des Moines, Mid-Sioux, the 2 chamber requests, CASA for $250, and golf for $5,000. That comes up to $18,800. So that gives you a local option sales tax balance of $318,708. And then what you could do if you wanted to follow Brad's suggestion is, you could take another $5,000 and put it in there from lost, and then ask for the marketing committee to convene and consider the remainder.
Sam, question about lost. There is an equation here about how these funds are allocated. 37.5% property tax relief and 62.5% economic betterment. How do we get to those numbers? Is that part of the resolution?
It's a 1995 public vote.
we went to the voters.
Right.
Yeah, there was an election back.
So in 95, it was dictated that the 1% would be distributed thusly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
I was 12.
So Sam,
Yes.
with what you just stated,
We
can
need
you
to
put
talk
it
about
into
rural development too.
Can you put it into context of the value? Why do all this? Why are you proposing this?
Well, the local option sales tax fund is a large majority of it is structured for community betterment. And if you look at what I have done, it's a team effort, but what I've recommended over the past 2 years, we have taken as city government more and more from local option sales tax for community betterment activities run and sponsored and managed by the city. These requests all benefit the community in other ways and are managed by other people, and almost all of them are items that you have consistently funded before out of this fund. So I think it's important to add too. Again, there's a lot of unknowns with the rural development application that's pending. But if for example, if we were funded $1.8 million and we had a 35% match to come up with that could be financed, regardless of whether it's grants or loans. If it's 65% loans and 35% grant, either way, our match is 10%. So then we have to come up with $180,000. So we either come up for $180,000 out of lost, or we come up with, or we do a conventional loan, which has a small, debt levy impact. Angie and I are both like-minded. We're both pretty frugal. We have there is some cushion in this, and for example, the software that she talked about earlier, the people that do the town cloud software that we use for the agendas. And Angie and I have spoken to the executive there. That gentleman helped develop the software that Tyler Technologies uses. That's so expensive. That's $108,000. But they're willing to give us a quote that's significantly less than that if we would want to go with one of their systems. So we have some other options here, but we need to be really careful, not to spend local option sales tax too far down, because just in these last 2 days, you've heard 3 full-time employee requests come up, and we're all conscious of the impacts on the levy.
And as was noted in Angie's memo, surprising that local option sales tax was as strong as it was. Now, I hope that remains the case, but as we all know, we live in very turbulent times, so you do get a little bit leery about spending that down too far.
The other thing, Wayne, if I might, is did I answer your question earlier?
Yeah, it's helping me. Thank you.
Okay. So the other thing to keep in mind, what I'd really like to get away from is long-term agreements out of local option sales tax. I would really like them to be subject to annual appropriation, if at all possible. And that's what we've done with some of these other requests. Because when you do a long-term funding agreement out of local option sales tax, it binds future councils in a significant way, and you have the right to do it. But go into that eyes wide open. That it would be my preference that you look at an annual appropriation, so you can at least come back and see how that money is being used. And but it's difficult, because once you get to the end of the 10-year agreement, you get to the 11th year, and the entity that's received the the money for 10 years, like, oh, this is going away. We want to find a way to continue this. And so from a management standpoint, it's really, an annual appropriation process might be more work up front, but it puts you in the driver's seat more than before.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having those dollars available for things that pop up that aren't on our radar. You know, I'm looking here at the software, $109,000, and then police chief's truck. So you got $150,000 worth of stuff that won't be here next year. So I feel like that does give us some cushions for perhaps the added full-time employee expenditures for however much we can take out of local option sales tax. Is that the correct understanding? Am I going about this the right way?
It is, but Wayne, it's also a balance too, because you don't want to turn your local option sales tax into another general fund, right? So you have to find a way to balance that.
A comment first and then a question. I like Brad's suggestion regarding the challenge to the marketing committee, the SEDC/marketing committee, in funding that $20,000. I guess my question then is for Kurt. Do you anticipate that being received well, or is it going to a lot of kickback on that, or?
Well, I don't want to speak for a committee of 11 who, are pretty passionate about the marketing committee and some of the projects and stuff they do. I mean, Billion being one of them, they've leveraged dollars through they believe in the project. So I think you just got to bring it back to them, let them do their work, and see how they take it. So I did have a conversation with Heidi Brown already, coming out of our SEDC meeting that Brad referenced, so she has a heads up that it may be a possibility. So I guess to answer your question, the best thing I can tell you is that the bridge has already been crossed a little bit, so some of that conversation has already been had. So I think we have a meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks, so it can be brought up for consideration.
I mean, from where I'm sitting, it seems to make sense in terms of how the dollars are being used, the promotion of the community, and all that, and you're rolling out of one into another one. So I think there's merit to the idea. I'm not holding you to anything at this point, but I think to me it's worth the discussion.
Certainly can bring it back for discussion, Mayor, and see what they say, and go from there.
Yeah, it's prudent to explore all avenues when you're talking a dollar sum like this.
And we hope motel tax revenue rebounds, right? I mean, it took a huge hit, like Angie said, due to COVID. We're hoping 2021 it rebounds. We got a new hotel anticipated here in the next couple of years, and hopefully continues to increase the revenue for more disposal. But all that is up in there. So with your direction, I'm happy to bring it back to the marketing committee for consideration, and leave Chairperson Heidi Brown, let her know what you guys are thinking, let her bring it to the committee level for discussion.
Kurt, I think along those lines, I think it would be good to hear back from them what they feel the impact would be.
Sure, I would agree.
So that way we're not just looking at subjective.
Right. Absolutely. I think they would appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So just give me direction on that. I don't know what it does need to be right now, but let me know. I'm happy to do that.
I guess, yeah, based on Brad's recommendation, my request to you would be to speak with the marketing committee about the feasibility of this, and then I think we as a council will wait on this upon further conversation with the marketing committee.
So the request from the school and the college was a 10-year pledge at $25,000 a year.
I think we would probably be looking at replacing the pavilion gift with this one. It would be easier for us to allocate, I think, $5,000 than it would be $25,000.
So the request would be $20,000 a year for 10 years.
Yes.
Kurt and I did look at urban renewal, by the way, and it isn't an option. We tried.
So the total that I come up with is roughly 81,000 and a little change for the request, these other requests that we've just dealt with now here at the end of our meeting. Is that, did I do my math? I was just quick adding here at the table, but.
Outside of the
All these presentations that we just went through, I come up with, and that includes the NCC and the rides request, the school turf project.
for one annual cost, yeah, for next year's.
For next year.
Just for next year, yes.
Yeah.
Now, some of those would be ongoing.
Correct.
But if, marketing, if they would decide to move forward with that, that knocks 20,000 out of that.
Right.
You mentioned, Sam, you'd like to see those long-term commitments handled differently.
Annual appropriation. And in all likelihood, the result would be the same, but it gives the council a voice in the process and an opportunity for an update and a report.
Okay. All right. I think we've got enough to chew on for a while here and think about. We should really move into the public comments portion of it right now. I don't know if there are any public comments from anybody here. Anybody who wants to speak to anything? Anyone listening in by Zoom that would have public comments at this time? I see. Oh, that's us.
Kristen.
Yeah. So then we have no comments, so I think we can move forward then on to the balance estimates. Or-
I wasn't going to speak. It was just for information.
Oh, okay. All right. Then we're up to you, Sam.
All right.
Urban renewal.
So my memo right underneath the item 7 on the electronic version or in your binders speaks for itself. This is ambitious, and the easiest on the list in terms of logistics in my time is the debt retirement for the pavilion and the bonding for the streets. The hard work is what Todd has to do with the estimates. The most complicated part for me will be releasing TIF. In 2010, the City Council initiated the process to remove part of Sunshine and Skimper additions, and I didn't find out about that until I was looking at releasing the same, and it's going to be a bit of a zoo to clean up because of 10 years has gone by, and there wasn't the hearings held to remove it, and what I would have done, what I'd like to do is actually remove more of Sunshine than what was removed. I'd like to go to the 8th Avenue.
South 8th, yeah.
Yep. And there all the way to the apartment building, that whole corner. But to be very clear, we want to keep them in the urban renewal area, but release TIF. Okay? And that's a hearing process. We're going to have to hire an engineer, the cost of several $1,000s. I have 2 quotes, and I was marching forward on this, and Todd came across the hall and he says, I think it would probably be a good idea to, as you've been advised, to from time to time to put things on the back burner and bring it to the City Council at budget time and ask for their for further input before you prepare it for an agenda item. So this is very hypothetical at this point. I do not know exactly how much will be released, so I'm not prepared to say what that would be. Some of it has already been released because we haven't been collecting the increment for 10 years. But I think it makes sense to move forward with that, and with what we're seeing with the growth in the TIF fund, we will still have enough money for our growing needs. So I think it's a good move. The other thing that I'd like to talk about would be adding any questions on removing TIF. remove?
I think it's
Part A, 7A.
no. I think that's something that we need to be looking at.
Okay. And then for adding parcels to the urban renewal area, the two main airport parcels have been part of the urban renewal area since 1994. To my knowledge, there has not been one penny of tax increment financing spent on the airport. I think that there's opportunities going forward. Would like to also add those. We have to add them to the urban renewal area. So there's two main initial steps: is the geography, adding them to the urban renewal area, and then adding them to the urban renewal plan. Sorry, I meant to say plan. And so there's been discussion on a runway, parallel taxiway, and then which is important to the airport commission. I think that vision needs to be laid out a little bit more, which is they're in the process of doing. But what is important, and the FAA deems important too, is some runway protection on the south end. Those parcels, that parcel is not in the urban renewal area now, and it would need to be added to both the urban renewal area and the urban renewal plan. You cannot add agricultural land to urban renewal area without having landowner permission. The rest of it is just subject to a public hearing if you want to add residential property. It's a bit of a larger, longer process for adding the airport parcels. So any questions on the airport? Otherwise, I'll move on to the school district parcels. Okay. Again, all I'm asking for right now is to add parcels. I'm not asking to spend money at the moment. So, except for the $42,500 for the fueling system that has been plugged into the budget. If we can justify that through the urban renewal process, that's where we would upfront the money from there rather than general fund or local option sales tax. School district parcels. There's been some discussion on assisting Children's World. It is proper and legal to use urban renewal funds under the economic development designation to assist child cares. It's becoming quite common across the state, and so in order to facilitate that, we would need to add the school district three parcels to come down from Highway 18 to add a Children's World, and then we would do an agreement similar to what we do with rides, and then assist Children's World. And we did plug in $25,000 in anticipation of that out of the urban renewal section of the budget. The third item, and if it's okay, Daryl is here from Bethel Church. And is it okay? I'll just briefly introduce this, and if he'd like to add a few words. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the former Bethel Church site, the building was damaged a number of years ago in a fire, which created significant issues. And I've been inside the building, and I'm not a big fan of stairs, and there's a lot of stairs in that building. It's difficult to do much of anything with, but it's in a great spot. It's in an area of town that Kurt and I have been talking about for the past couple of years about ways that we can encourage more development in the heart of our city. And so at this point, no money is being asked for from urban renewal. We would need to come down from Highway 18, come across City Park, and come down, I think, 6th Avenue and grab those parcels in urban renewal area, and that would pave the way for being included in the urban renewal plan under blight designation, and then doing cleanup and remediation to facilitate housing because it's zoned residential multiple residential. So it would not work if it's turned into a theater or or something nonprofit. It's only going to work if it's housing, because then there's other resources and monies potentially available. So, Daryl, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting when I got up this morning to be standing here, so. But, I'm Daryl Rose. I'm currently a member of the Bethel Church leadership team. And as Sam said, the fire years ago, what came out of that is we just determined that it was not feasible for pursuing our ministries to do it on that existing structure anymore. And it's been an ongoing process, and with our ownership of the city lot across the street, that's always been our goal to build a new campus ministry there, and that's our goal, that's our desire, and that's what we've committed to now. So then that brings us then to the next part of it is changing ownership of our existing property, and then through that process, I've had a lot of conversations and good input from Sam and from Kurt. And I really appreciate all the very, very good advice and just information they've given. So I guess speaking for myself and I feel like speaking for our leadership, our church, our biggest goal is obviously we would like to relinquish that property in the best means to Bethel Church. But we also want it to be good for the community, for the neighborhood, and for the city. So because obviously we have in somewhat a dotted line vested interest, because if we're going to be there doing all of our ministries, we want that to be something we're proud of too. And as Sam explained this, it just seemed very logical to apply for this, to potentially bring in someone that would make it into a very useful and benefit for both the church and for the city. So,
any questions for Daryl?
if you have any question, you just direct them to Tom.
Yeah, I have to disclose I am a member of Bethel Reformed Church, so any comments I have tonight will be from the city's perspective and not from everything other.
Would the area where the youth house be included in there, or would they be holding on to that?
That would be included in that.
It's basically a half block, Sean.
What I appreciate about what they're doing is coming to us and collaborating with us on this, because really what they could do is, because before the church was built, there's 6 or 7 lots there, and those lot lines are still drawn. So we could sell off the 3 or 4 lots on the east side, and sell off come to the Board of Adjustment for some adjustments, and sell off the youth house, and then leave the church, and it really needs to be redeveloped all as one site. And so if you have it in urban renewal area, and then make way for future urban renewal plan updates, where you could where we could participate in some fashion with assisting with the redevelopment contingent on new levels of taxation, that's a win-win. The other tool is urban revitalization, which you could do without all of this work. But urban revitalization only helps you with a tax break. Doesn't help you with, you can't do upfront grants for demolition. You can't do, upfront assistance. But it's a big help on the back end, but it doesn't help with cash flow for a developer. And that a developer coming in and looking at working with old infrastructure, they would need something like this in order to bite.
And I'd like to express our appreciation to Sam and to Todd and to Kurt. I mean, Sam and Todd were, like Sam said, in the building, and we walked around every part of that building, and it was it was good having them see it firsthand, and they obviously looked at it through different lenses than I did, you know, and so it was very beneficial.
Right.
And then,
Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl.
And then if I could hit part C. So I already spoke about the pavilion payoff. We can call it a payoff, and that's kind of what it is, but it's really the legal vehicle is a defeasance because it can't actually be paid off for a couple of years. So, but the debt comes completely off of our books. It's not even our money anymore. Once we write the check, then it's in an escrow account, and then it's off of our debt balance. And I have a draft engagement agreement under Part C there, and Scott Stevenson and I spoke about it again today. He's with D.A. Davidson, our bonding crew that assists us, and it's not a contract per se to do all of these specific things. It's an umbrella agreement that allows them to basically help us mix and match and get to where we need to be. So I would like to put that on next week's agenda for, if you're okay with this plan. I could wait until the budget's adopted too, but to start the process of working with him, particularly on the pavilion, and then I need to start working with an engineer on the TIF release, and that's going to be a long process. And by the way, back to the TIF release, it wouldn't actually be released until the next fiscal year. It's too late to do it for this one. I kind of skipped over the streets bonding. I don't know if you have any questions on that. Todd might be better equipped to answer those questions than me, but we can tag team it.
You pretty well covered that recently, so.
All right. So what do you need from us now at this point? Anything else?
I just would like your consensus to be able to move forward with Section 7.
So all you need is a consent from us?
Yeah, just I mean, you'll be voting on all of it coming forward. It sounds like you're supportive of Crossroads North.
Yes.
And you're supportive at least of the discussion of the grant straw options, which we would discuss again next year, but we at least wanted to get that in front of you. We're not asking to do that this coming year, but we could just, Scott and I can start working on it in this agreement to get it ready.
Say that again about Crossroads North again, please.
Okay, the $981,000 that Angie went through earlier, that we would be doing a short-term bond, Tom, like we did the short-term bond with the $2.5 million earlier.
Right.
So we'd be doing that same concept for $981,000, whatever it works out being for Crossroads North, to do that in this coming fiscal year.
You know, I've shared some thoughts with Kurt on this as well, and so in respect, you know, with full respect to what we're trying to do with Crossroads North, this is not counter to that. What I question is whether the timing is correct, and so I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up tonight to my fellow councilman and mayor here. We've got opportunities that are shovel-ready right now in our community to promote new business and attract the kind of development that we planned for those properties a long time ago. What I question is whether or not, because of priority, if there is somewhere else that $900,000 benefit us this next coming fiscal year than
Crossroads North.
Than Crossroads North infrastructure. And again, I'm not saying that because I'm against the project, but it is a good chunk of money, and I do believe that. I think I would like to get your guys' opinions on this because I respect you guys, your opinions on this. But is there somewhere else that we could utilize that money this coming year?
So since this would be a bond issue, it would be something that we would not be relegated to a particular parcel or area for which to spend this money. Is that correct? So if we don't spend it at Crossroads North, we could spend it somewhere else within the city, not restricted by district or area or what have you.
It is restricted within the urban renewal area and essential corporate purpose, for making those improvements. So it's not.
I guess, yeah. So then the reason why I bring that up, Tom, is that the only area we could utilize these dollars is what you have proposed.
Oh, no. I mean, there's other, sure, there's other projects that you could potentially use it on. What we brought forward to you was a balance of old and new.
Sure.
And that was the idea behind it.
Tom, did you have something in mind in particular?
Nothing that's been laid out, but there's a lot of opportunity on $900,000 to kick it around a little bit before we spend it. So, we talked about urban renewal and urban revitalization, and I think we've got a lot of opportunities within the community in areas that really need that to be done for the total health, in my opinion, of the city long term. So is this an opportunity to where we redirect some of that money into a fledgling program or into an initial program to start looking at what's feasible along those lines? I mean, we're setting up these areas because we have a vision for them. Should we start to look at funding something within those visions to move those forward?
Well, we know that for Crossroads North, we've got the option on the Granstra land that we're going to be at the same price point for the next 5 years, because we're not going to do anything within this particular funding cycle before the escalator hits. So we know that we have bought some time in regards to making decisions about that area. So in that vein, I guess I can understand where you're coming from and saying that there's maybe not an immediate and pressing need. Maybe there could be other areas that we could spend that in more terms of revitalization versus.
One thing that comes to my mind is that employers in this community need more employees. And for our community to grow, we need to have housing for them to come in. And we made great strides over the past few years getting a good start on that. But we're not there yet. There's a lot of opportunity there yet where we could really help charge that program of getting more affordable housing to attract more workers to work in this community and benefit this community from. Is that an area where we could use some of that money to develop?
I think I agree with you 100% that is a top priority, but where do you put it? As we know, we had conversations on some available land in closed session that was not feasible. as far as the price that we could pay for it. We looked at options for doing it with TIF, and that you couldn't make it pencil out. And that's not to say that it's got to be 100% profitable, but at the same time, you got to be in the same ballpark. I mean, I'm sure if there was a readily identifiable area where we could put some of that, use some of that money as seed money to grow a project like that, I think that would be something to look at. But I mean, for Sam and Kurt, I mean, there's not really anywhere shooting from the hip that $1 million could be utilized to that end that you're thinking of, is there?
Doesn't mean a hill of beans to me, but Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong. When you stated that we already hit the annual escalator on the potential option, that's incorrect. I think the current rate is good until the end of 2022.
So January 1 of 2023.
Yeah, I guess when I said that, I was going off of a conversation that Kurt and I had prior, in so much as we probably, looking at the state of things, wouldn't be pulling the trigger on that necessarily before that point. I don't think that there's enough of a plan in place to make that jump.
So, again, just as a clarification, if that's the case, then I think you should potentially question Sam with D.A. Davidson, because part of the umbrella agreement is to prepare to exercise that option not now, not in this budget, but in a budget later. So if you're not thinking you're going to do that and you're thinking you're going to do more streets or build a water tower or something else differently, then you maybe need to give us different direction. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings, but that's what's proposed in front of you, correct, Sam?
Well, okay, let me ask you this, Todd. If we had, okay, say we proceed in this trajectory, would we be able to have, and maybe you're not the right person to ask, I just ask because you're at the mic, would we have the resources necessary to be able to exercise that option before the 2022 escalator date?
Yeah, so I'm a better spender than a saver, so you got to ask these two. Yeah.
So everything is yes.
I mean, potentially. I mean, when you looked at it, Sam, you said there would likely be what's the option? 1.2, 1.3. I mean that's
1.2
seems feasible, but there's other things that I mean, a water tower is, what was the last estimate? 2.5. There's $4 million in Lewis and Clark coming. There's a few $100,000 worth of other upgrades. There's, we put $3 million of the streets in front of you, and we could put 10 if you want to see it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of where you want to go with it. But yeah, I myself am in support of doing Crossroads North this fiscal year, simply because it works financially, and this is just a Todd Ewell personal opinion. It's got nothing to do with being Public Works Director. I'd like to see us get ground that we own shovel ready, so that it gives us a fighting chance to fill it.
But we have ground that's shovel ready, as Tom pointed out.
Yeah, we have parcel. Either that or you're going to Floyd. So you have some heavy industrial and you have one lot of arterial commercial in that development.
I think back to the first section we didn't really spend time with was our goal setting from 2019. And one of the things, there are a number of things listed there, but housing, affordable housing, as Tom mentioned, is on that list. And that has been on the list as long as I've been doing these goal-setting sessions. Affordable housing has been in the top 3 every time we've done it. We have lots available on the east end. We don't have very many that I would deem what most people would deem affordable. And the problem, the other side of the coin, is the double-edged sword. You don't have, people know you're looking for ground. We've got ground that's out there that for the right price, we could buy, but the price that they're wanting it, it's not affordable. And so that seems to be the harder goal to achieve, but yet to me that's the higher priority probably as well. Affordable housing, because that's more of a need in my mind right now than more shovel-ready ground. If we had somebody come in, like we did, we had that once it was done, they were ready to buy, I'd be thinking differently about this. But right now, it's just kind of, if you build it, they will come kind of almost. And so I think Tom's concern, it has merit. And I don't, and where are our priorities? We've got a very balanced you mentioned the new versus the old. I think we're covering a lot of bases here. But in terms, what are we doing to address that goal of affordable housing, other than talking about it? And I don't have the answer. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I guess the problem that we're going to run into is that we have to wait for land to become available, and to become available at a price that is reasonable. But do we do nothing until that time? I guess becomes the question. We can't halt progress and hope. So if we utilize what's, I have the same page as you pulled up on my iPad. So that was the first thing that I thought of was our goal setting session. If we can, we've identified parcels and we've identified landowners that we've wanted to talk to, and I know that those conversations are happening and they're happening in good faith, but I don't think anything's ready. So is it that we don't want to spend the money, period? I don't think that's quite the case. But in the absence of something that can hit this goal, these bullet points here for our goals from the goal setting session, well, I guess we look at what's available, what's the next best thing. I think we were solid as a council last year when we sat here and we identified streets as a priority. Spent several $1 million on that, and so I think we've shown that we have a history of revitalization and looking inward to improving our own infrastructure. But I think outside of their having land come available, I think we still need to. We can't start to curb the growth because we're a snowball right now, and this snowball is coming down the mountain, and it's coming down quick. And I'd hate to see that momentum stop.
One option too is to provide some. We could discuss negotiating more options. That's we can. There's been some discussions on outright purchases, but as when you can't, you got to be careful with using tax increment financing for buying ag land for residential development, but you can use tax increment financing for purchasing residentially zoned ground that's not that's not ag. There's more flexibility there. You can actually do the other too, but it's a little bit more complicated. But there, and that's something that Kurt and I have been talking about. Trying to find ways to acquire and facilitate cleanups of other parcels that are dilapidated, and we're actually already doing that without having to spend a lot of money, other than some nuisance, prosecutions, and that's turned out pretty well for us. But anyway, this is a starting point for the discussion. I mean, this whole section doesn't need to be in a budget hearing. It could be moved to a council meeting. I'd like to think it sounds like I have support for moving. We have support for moving forward with the pavilion payoff, with moving forward with the streets. But it can wait for a month or two while we have a good discussion on Crossroads North and the other. You know, one of the ideas that I had floated was let's buy the, if we believe we're going to buy the Granster ground, let's buy it now. Lease it out, and it's ours, and then you could potentially use Rise grant money if you have something that comes forward. But as Kurt and I, we have a great rapport, and one of the things he said as a counterpoint to that is as well, in terms of shovel ready. There's the perception that we have all this shovel ready ground, but the area by the co-op is really poised to develop, and we should have more that's shovel ready. So that's how we ended up with phase 2 being first and the Granster options being second.
And if I can just make a comment, a good point, I'll piggyback on what Todd said too. I mean, we as staff sat down and kind of prioritized these things and put a lot of thought and process into it. And, you know, if you look at that map I just handed out, I mean, we bought that 35 acres at a pretty hefty price in hopes of developing it, right? We did phase 1 because we wanted to phase it out and alleviate costs over time. When we completed phase 1, we opened up 9.14 of 35 acres of ground. And we've got our anchor developer in there in co-op, and Jimmy John's came along and saw our vision, which leaves us about, you know, it says 3.14 acres of lot 7. Really, the developable ground in that lot 7, because there's a retention pond in there, is less than 2 acres. So as far as having shovel-ready ground in one of our biggest areas of town with a prime anchor in there, we don't have the majority of our development opened. By doing phase 2, which we're projecting to do here, opens up over 23 acres of ground, making it shovel ready to make us in a position of development and putting it in a position of having anchors already in place, which is going to help us. And to Wayne's point of snowball effect, we're seeing that a little bit. I mean, we had a hotel developer that saw the vision of the pavilion and want to be a part of that. I just don't, you know, economic development is very competitive. You get clients that come through the woodwork unannounced, and they may be ready for a project in this fiscal year. What do you have? And they might want to be to the north of co-op. Well, we have it. We don't have infrastructure stuff to it. Okay, community B. So it's the game. It's the chicken or the egg theory. Where are you at? We can use chicken or egg theory with the Runger development. Back in 2014, we stubbed half of that in there with no client, no prospect, and then we filled it up within 2 years. The council at that point said, let's do phase 2. We filled that up, and now that development is completely full. We don't know. However, if we don't do it, we take ourselves out of the game a little bit. So we're not quite as competitive. So that's why I think, Todd, you have something?
It's just the only other thing I want to comment, and it's based off of what Mayor Gill said about, well, if we get somebody, then let's do it. I think you all remember the bid when we opened phase 1. I know I did, because my stomach rolled over, because we came in, 15% high, something like that. But we were in a hurry, we wanted to do it, we didn't want to take the time to rebid, we accepted the bid. If we do it now, you do the project on our time frame, not on somebody else's, and you potentially mitigate overbids coming in by being forced to a schedule versus choosing your schedule. Street projects, I'll use an example, and I know sometimes in bidding you win and sometimes in bidding you lose, but there's a project where we picked our schedule that we thought benefited the most, and our bids came in 9% under estimate. Much better situation. So, not saying it's a deal breaker, but keep that in mind. There's appropriate times to bid projects like this, and inappropriate times.
That's a fine point, Todd, and yours is too, Kurt. Yep. Something maybe you can help me clarify a little bit is shovel ready versus not, and a potential comes in, wants to build. What time frame are we really thinking, or can we put into context?
Well, Todd maybe can help me out with this, but you know, we need to bid that project out as a whole, right? I mean, if somebody wants to come in and buy lot 5 here that doesn't have, a client, sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about, I want to go out and I want to build, I want to move my business out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I start working with you, and we're negotiating, and we decided that we can come to a price on this that fits both of our needs. I'm not going to be able to go out there tomorrow and start building it either.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
There's steps that I'm going to have to go through.
Yep.
How does that compare to, a normal time frame for someone who wants to come in and develop that land with their stuff compared to what we're trying to talk about
Sure.
here?
It can
Getting
vary.
the street and utilities in and stuff like that.
So it can vary, and that's a good question. I guess the example I'll use would be the hotel project that we just got done approving. Right now, if we'd have infrastructure stubbed to that lot by the pavilion that they're looking at, we'd be coming to you guys here right now saying we need to phase that in as part of the next fiscal year budget to get infrastructure stubbed in there. That puts us out a year approximately because we got to go through this process. That becomes a fiscal year 21-22 project, and we may have a hotel developer that steps away because that doesn't fit their timeline or they don't want to wait that long. Now, this is one example, but I think there's a number of them. You talk, fortunately, heavy industrial ground, we're in a position we're shovel ready, so we don't have to worry about a heavy user coming in and not having the infrastructure stubbed in because we have it in our heavy industrial. We're blessed to have that right now. But, God forbid, we have a good project here that wants to develop straight north of Co-op. We may have this conversation. We may go through the negotiation phase of them right now, and we want to, they want to close on the ground and start a project this year. Well, we're really a year out because if we don't do it this year, this is a conversation we have next year this time. And if it's approved next year this time, really it's a project a year out. Right, Todd? For the most part. I mean, it goes out for bid. It becomes a fiscal year 22-23 project realistically if it's not approved this year. Everything just gets pushed back really a year and a half.
The answer is yes, and it's because our fiscal year is in the middle of the construction season.
Right. That doesn't help us either.
Yeah,
That hurts us.
Yeah.
So.
And that's part of the frustration with working with government as opposed to private industry. We're nailing this down for a coming year that doesn't start until June.
Right.
So if you came today and said, I want to do lot 2, and we didn't approve it in this budget, we'd have to say, okay, well, let's see, that would be June of 22, we can start this, and then when we get that, you can do yours, and so you're that far out. And
We wouldn't be able to amend our budget.
I'm sorry?
We wouldn't be able to amend our budget to cover that?
For $1 million something? I don't know.
Well, then you also have to look at getting contractors, because if someone comes to you in the summer and says, "Hey, let's do this," the contractor's gonna be like, "Okay, well, next year looks pretty good, maybe." Oh yeah.
I guess I understand what we're doing here. I also understand that we keep talking about the affordable housing thing, and we need to move forward on that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we need to do them both.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
And I think we have to keep that in mind. I would like to have realistic discussion about what are the possibilities. I know that we have some ground. Maybe we should look at developing that, or maybe we should try and trade it. And I know you guys are working on those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
But I also can see where this could be an issue of timing with somebody that says, yeah, this is great, I want to do that, and you have to say, well, yeah, but we didn't put any of that infrastructure in, so we got to do that first. I can see where that's a problem. It's kind of catch-22 we got going here.
And housing is a top priority for us too. I mean, we got a phase 2 hopefully out east with Eagle Construction that gets pulled and that trigger gets pulled. But identifying new ground, as we've all talked about, is a high priority. And that's something we talk about on a daily basis sometimes on affordable housing. It just comes down to ground to this point. Find another sunshine type development. We know how well that went. Smaller lots, less restrictive in covenants. Get some more multifamily ground on the books because we're limited in multifamily ground right now too. But I don't think that should be in lieu of something else. I just think we want to continue to be proactive. We always put our foot forward, and that's really been beneficial for us. This has been a big investment for us up front. I think we finish it out. That's the last piece of ground that we own that
isn't shovel-ready, that now it would be, and then everything that we have in our inventory is ready to be developed. And I think that puts our best foot forward on the investments that we made to this point as a city. These conversations with housing continue. There's no doubt about it. One thing with using TIF, as we talked about before, is you use TIF for LMI-type housing. So that's one challenge we got to work through as we move forward, too. But we think we can adjust that hurdle. So
I have a question. Is there a potential to use the rural development angle for any kind of housing thing?
I could find out.
Okay.
You know, using rural development for anything construction related is difficult because of Davis-Bacon and all the federal rules that go along with it.
We don't have to worry about construction yet. We don't have any ground. So.
Right. So, you mind if can I ask Tom a question real quick? So, is it an issue, Tom, of philosophically of what comes first in priority, or is it an issue of cost? Because there is an option here where we could look at a crossroads, something less than a phase 2.
It's strictly priority, Sam.
Okay.
And I think you're seeing it play out. And it's the discussion I was hoping that we would have, and not about how many dollars, okay? And because I think it's an important function of city government, the council, to go through this kind of process, especially when we go through goal setting, and we're all working towards the same thing. We're all trying to do a really good job of making sure we do the right things in the right order to continue the success that we've seen. So that's not the issue in my mind. My mind is that, is it the right time to do it? And is there something else that it has better timing that we should be considering that we've already made some commitment to? And I'd like to have that discussion. And unfortunately, it's falling on a project that you're getting into the budgeting on.
Yep.
But I think it's a discussion we need to have. And
we initially had this discussion last year, too. I mean, I think we pushed phase 2 off a year with the hopes of doing it back-to-back consecutive fiscal years. We didn't. We did prioritize other things, which is great. And reinvesting into our community and infrastructure, I think, is always important.
It might be helpful in the future that if we buy land and we plot it out, is to do the infrastructure right away.
No.
Get it done.
If we had more, if we had more inventory.
Yeah, and that was actually the first intention with that.
Sure.
But because of other escalators, we scaled it back.
Sure. No, I understand.
Every time we do it in pieces, it costs us more money.
Right. But I mean, it is a significant issue. You got to buy the land, and then we've got to come up with the money to be able to make it usable. And you can't have one without the other to be successful.
Correct. 100%.
So anyway, I appreciate everyone's comments and time on this, and I would welcome some more discussion on it, but not to the fact that what you're proposing is off the table by any means. That's not what I'm proposing. But I want to make sure that we're all know where we're heading on this.
I guess, to me, when I look at this and I consider what we've talked about, this is here, and we can do this. The other thing is there, but we're further away from being able to do anything about that. I don't know that we need to put this off. We can't do anything until we do that. Well, I'm not sure that's true. This is here, and we can do it. But I would also say that, yes, I would like to continue the discussion and realistic planning of how are we going to get to that goal. First of all, you have to agree on what's affordable housing. Good luck with that.
Good luck.
And what's reasonable land cost.
Right. But we can't put off everything else waiting for that to happen. I don't want to do that. But I also don't want to ignore it.
So one option that I can think of with Crossroads Phase 2, if you wanted to, is you could leave it budgeted, continue your discussions, and instead of me starting in 2 weeks fast tracking this thing to get it on the schedule to try to get it for 21, construction, we can slow roll it, not start or finish the design until August or September, bid it fall of 21 for spring of 22 construction. It potentially would spill over into the next fiscal year. But it maybe doesn't cost us but a couple of months of potential money.
But at the same time, we're looking at 2.25% interest. Is that what it was?
Yeah, this would be spending down your cash.
Oh, okay. Well, because I know that there's. So then, I guess to the other point, if we do have items that come up, we're at a little over 50% of our bonding capacity. Not that I'm advocating that we go out and undo all the great work that Sam has done, but the rates are cheap.
You bet they are.
So I guess I would be of the mindset of moving forward with this as proposed. I mean, I don't know. I know we don't have to make a decision right now, but I guess as we're gauging each other's temperatures on this, that's where I sit.
How about I do this in the interest of moving forward? I have that DA Davidson agreement on consent. I'll move it to non-consent for next week, and we can talk more about it then. Is that all right?
Okay.
I think that would be good. That way we have time to digest and think and come out with.
Have supper?
Yep.
Tom, does that sound good?
Oh, no, I appreciate the whole process, and I appreciate everyone involved, and thank you. I think it's an.
So.
I think it was an important discussion. So, thank you.
Is everything clear to you, Ange, as far as what your next steps are going to be, or do you need more direction from the council?
I guess I need to know when we're going to meet again. I didn't get a consensus from any of you as to what you're doing with all the requests from Lost.
There was the 5 requests from Lost. Do you want to meet again, or do you want to decide if you want to add those in and then defer the turf until a later time?
NCC is already built into the budget, correct?
NCC is built in, Housing Trust is built in, Rides is built in.
So list the 5 that are in question.
You got the 5. You got Upper Des Moines Opportunity, $3,300. Mid-Sioux Opportunity, $250. Chamber, $10,000 for their 2 requests. CASA, $250, and Golf Course, $5,000. The total of those 5 requests is $18,800.
Do we need a motion?
Oh, by consensus is fine.
Well, I think we ought to go ahead with those.
Moving ahead.
I think the only thing that's still hanging out there is whether or not we get we need to get feedback from the marketing committee and work through that process.
That's not anyone
that's
they
not
listed.
in the
that's not in it.
No, that's not in the 5. Yeah, that one is tabled to allow marketing committee to discuss. You can always come back and do a supplemental for $5,000. That's not that big of a deal. So.
All right, never mind. Then I have my consent as well.
So
I'm in as long as that tree is really fascinating. Wait here till the end.
No pressure.
Brad, I sensed you were going to say something, or
No, I'm in for it.
okay. There's your consensus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you need anything else from us?
I don't think so. If you're going to discuss all the urban renewal, and you're leaving that the same, I think I'm good to go.
Okay.
You're doing all the hard work anyway, so.
Motion to adjourn from someone?
So moved to adjourn.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Brewster.
Aye.
Himmel.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I won't do it to you.
Officially my favorite day of the year. It's the longest possible time between budget sessions. Right?
And I didn't do it.